The crowded cafe buzzes with laughter and clinking cups. In the corner sits Evelyn, a shy street violinist in her mid-20s, her old violin case open, barely holding a few crumpled bills. Suddenly, a confident man in a designer suit, Ryan, a rising entrepreneur, tosses a coin and says mockingly, "Play something worth listening to. Prove your talent on that violin, and I'll marry you." The crowd laughs, but Evelyn lifts her eyes, calm, steady, unshaken. She simply replies, "You'll regret saying that." The afternoon sun poured through the wide glass windows of the Velvet Cup Cafe, painting warm golden streaks across the wooden tables. The air was alive with chatter, coffee steam, and the faint hum of jazz. In the farthest corner, where the light dimmed and the noise softened, sat Evelyn, a young woman in her mid-20s, her hair tied in a neat bun, her violin resting gently on her lap like a fragile secret. Her clothes were plain, her shoes slightly worn, but her presence had a quiet grace, the kind that didn't ask for attention but somehow held it anyway. Every afternoon she played here for tips, soft melodies that melted into the hum of life. Today, however, the room's attention wasn't on her music. It was on Ryan Hale, the confident young millionaire whose face often appeared on business magazines. Dressed in an expensive navy suit, he was surrounded by friends, all sharp laughter, expensive watches, and careless arrogance. As Evelyn began to play, a hush rippled through the cafe. Her bow moved with delicate precision, pulling out a haunting tune that carried both sorrow and beauty. For a few moments, even the chatter softened. But Ryan, smirking, leaned back in his chair. "Beautiful," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "But tell me, sweetheart, is that all you've got?" The cafe went silent. Evelyn paused, her bow hovering midair. She looked up, eyes calm but steady. Ryan continued, his tone playful but edged with cruelty. "I'll make you a deal," he said, flipping a gold coin between his fingers. "Play something that moves me, something worth remembering. If you can do that, I'll marry you." Laughter erupted around him. His friends roared, and even the barista behind the counter tried not to smile. It was meant as a joke, a rich man's taunt to a struggling artist, but Evelyn didn't flinch. She placed her violin back under her chin and whispered, "You'll regret saying that." The room held its breath. Then she began to play. The first note sliced through the laughter like a knife, pure, trembling, and alive. Her fingers danced with emotion only pain could teach. The melody rose and fell like a confession, each sound spilling a story words could never hold. People froze mid-sip. A waitress stopped pouring coffee. Even Ryan's grin faltered as her music filled the air. A song of loss, of love, of something broken and yet beautiful. Tears shimmered in her eyes, though she didn't blink them away. When she finished, silence hung thick and heavy. No applause, no laughter, only the sound of Ryan's coin rolling across the table and falling to the floor with a hollow clink. Evelyn looked at him once more and said softly, "Some things can't be measured in money. Or dares." Then she walked out, her violin case in hand, leaving behind a room full of people, and one man whose heart had just begun to change. The rain began to fall that evening, soft at first, then steady, like a rhythm only Evelyn's violin could echo. She walked through the glistening streets, her violin case clutched to her chest, her reflection rippling in the puddles below. The cafe's laughter still rang faintly in her mind, but her heart was calm. She'd faced worse than mockery, far worse. Evelyn lived in a small, dimly lit apartment on the edge of town. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, and the window leaked when it stormed, but it was home. On her desk sat an old photo, a smiling woman with kind eyes, her mother, and beside her a little girl holding a tiny violin. The picture was worn, its edges torn, but Evelyn kept it close. That violin had been her mother's. When illness had taken her away 3 years ago, Evelyn had promised one thing, to never stop playing, no matter how cruel the world became. Music was her last connection to love, to the voice that once told her, "When life breaks you, play, and let your heart do the speaking." That's what she'd done today. She hadn't played to impress Ryan Hale or his polished friends. She played because she had to, because music was her only way to breathe. As she changed into a worn sweater, Evelyn sat by the window and looked out at the city lights flickering through the rain. She thought of the cafe crowd, their laughter, their disbelief when her melody silenced the room. A small smile touched her lips. "Let them laugh," she whispered. "They heard me, even if they don't know it yet." Meanwhile, across town, Ryan sat alone in his luxury penthouse, staring out at the same rain. The noise of his usual nightlife didn't appeal tonight. His mind replayed her song over and over, every trembling note, every raw emotion. It was as if she had opened a door inside him he didn't know existed. He remembered the way she looked at him, not with hate, but with quiet strength. The kind that came from pain, not pride. Who was she? Why did her music feel so personal? He poured himself a drink but couldn't take a sip. The melody had followed him home, haunting and beautiful, echoing through the silence of his empty apartment. For the first time in years, Ryan felt small. He couldn't sleep. The next morning, he made a decision that surprised even himself. He'd find her, not because of his foolish challenge, but because he needed to understand what she carried in her music. As the dawn light crept through the city, Evelyn sat with her violin, tuning its strings softly. She didn't know it yet, but her life, and the man whose arrogance she had shattered, were about to intertwine in ways that would change them both forever. Ryan Hale wasn't the kind of man who searched for people. Usually people searched for him, business partners, investors, admirers. But this time it was different. That haunting melody wouldn't leave his head, and neither would the image of the young woman standing in the rain, violin trembling in her hands, yet her spirit unbroken. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she lived. All he had was a memory, and a feeling. The next morning, Ryan drove back to the cafe, a place he rarely visited twice. The same waiter from the night before looked startled to see him. "That girl who played the violin. Do you know her name?" Ryan asked. The waiter frowned, thinking. "Evelyn, I think. She comes by sometimes. Plays for tips near the station or outside the old theater." Ryan nodded, his jaw set. That was all he needed. Hours later, under a gray sky, he found himself in the busy square near the train station. Amid the honking cars and rushing footsteps, a soft sound cut through the chaos. The violin. The same soul-stirring tone that had silenced his laughter now found him again. Like destiny. There she was, Evelyn. Her clothes were simple, her hair pulled back, her eyes closed as she played. Lost in the world her music built around her. A few coins glittered in her open case, raindrops clinging to their edges. Ryan stood at a distance, mesmerized. Each note carried warmth and sorrow, and something he couldn't name. He waited until she finished, until the last note faded into the damp air. Then quietly he stepped closer. "You played at the cafe last night," he said softly. Evelyn looked up, startled. Her expression shifted from recognition to unease. "Yes, and you're the man who mocked me." Her tone was calm, but her eyes held quiet defiance. Ryan lowered his gaze. "You're right. I was stupid. I didn't mean what I said." He paused. "Your music, it stayed with me. I can't stop hearing it." Evelyn blinked, unsure how to respond. She'd heard false compliments before. Pity dressed as kindness. But this felt different. His voice was raw, uncertain, like someone who'd been shaken awake. "I don't want your sympathy, Mr. Hale," she said, closing her violin case. "I just play because it's all I have." "I know," he said quietly. "And that's exactly why I want to help." She froze. "Help? Why?" Ryan took a slow breath. "Because I think the world needs to hear what I heard last night." For the first time, Evelyn saw sincerity in his eyes. No arrogance, no mockery, just truth. Still, she shook her head. "I'm not someone people want to hear. I'm just a street musician." Ryan smiled faintly. "Then let's change that." The rain began again, soft and rhythmic. Evelyn looked down at her violin, then at the man who once laughed at her, and for the first time, hope flickered through the storm. The theater lights dimmed, and the audience murmured with curiosity. Ryan Hale, the millionaire entrepreneur known for his lavish lifestyle, had announced a special charity event, an evening of hope. No one knew what to expect. Cameras flashed, murmurs rippled through the crowd, and in the front rows sat critics, investors, and socialites, all waiting to see what this was about. Backstage, Evelyn stood frozen. Her trembling hands clutched her violin, the same one her mother once played. She could still hear the rain outside, whispering through the city streets like it always did before something important in her life. Ryan stood beside her, dressed in a simple black suit, not the extravagant designer kind he usually wore. He looked calm, but his eyes betrayed the same nervousness that twisted her stomach. "You'll do fine," he said quietly. "You've already moved me. Tonight you'll move them too." Evelyn took a shaky breath. "What if they laugh?" "What if—" "They won't," Ryan interrupted softly. "Not tonight." He stepped onto the stage first, the crowd falling silent as he took the microphone. "A few weeks ago," he began, "I met someone who changed the way I see the world. She reminded me that greatness doesn't come from wealth or fame, but from heart. Tonight I want you to meet her." He turned toward the curtain. "Evelyn, the floor is yours." A hush swept over the hall as she stepped into the spotlight. The brightness nearly blinded her. For a second, she felt the weight of every judgmental eye, the same kind of laughter she'd endured at that cafe weeks ago. But then she remembered her mother's words, "When life breaks you, play, and let your heart do the speaking." She lifted her violin. The first note trembled in the air, soft, uncertain. Then another, stronger. Slowly the music unfolded like a story, one of pain, loss, and resilience. The melody rose, dipped, and soared, filling the room with a beauty that words could never hold. In the front row, people leaned forward. Phones stopped recording. Conversations ceased. Her music carried something pure, something sacred. Even Ryan, standing at the edge of the stage, felt his throat tighten. As the final note faded, the theater was silent for a long, breathless moment. Then thunderous applause erupted, not polite clapping, but something deeper, almost reverent. Evelyn stood frozen, tears pooling in her eyes. Ryan stepped beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Told you," he whispered, smiling. That night, Evelyn's story spread like wildfire. The clip of her performance flooded social media. Millions watched, millions cried. Reporters called her the violinist who healed hearts. But to Ryan, she was simply the girl who taught him what humility and grace truly meant. And somewhere, beneath the roar of applause, Evelyn looked up toward the ceiling, smiling through her tears. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "They finally heard me." The morning after the performance, sunlight spilled through Evelyn's window like a quiet blessing. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, interviews, invitations. News outlets called her the violinist who moved the world. Videos of her performance had reached millions overnight. But instead of excitement, Evelyn just sat there, her violin on her lap, her heart still trying to process what had happened. She wasn't chasing fame. All she'd ever wanted was to be heard, to let her mother's spirit live through her music. And somehow last night that wish had come true. As she sipped her tea, there was a soft knock on the door. When she opened it, Ryan Hale stood there. No bodyguards, no cameras, no luxury car waiting outside. Just him, holding a small envelope and a gentle smile. "You disappeared after the show," he said. "I had to come find you." Evelyn stepped aside, inviting him in. "I needed a moment," she said quietly. "Everything felt unreal." Ryan nodded. "It is unreal, but you made it happen." He paused, then placed the envelope on the table. "This belongs to you." Inside were legal documents, her name listed as co-founder of a new foundation, the Hale Music for Hope Initiative, a program designed to support young musicians who couldn't afford instruments or lessons. Next to her name was a generous donation, enough to change hundreds of lives. Evelyn's hand trembled as she read. "Ryan, I can't accept this." "You can," he said softly. "Because it's not charity. It's your legacy. You showed me what real art is, what it means to feel, to care. Now I want the world to have that too." Tears welled in her eyes. She'd spent years playing on street corners, hoping just one person would truly listen. And now, here she was, helping others find their own voices through the same gift that once kept her alive. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just promise me you'll keep playing," Ryan said with a smile. "Because the world still needs your music," she laughed softly through her tears. "Then I guess I will." Weeks later, the foundation's first event took place. A small concert in a community hall filled with children holding donated violins. Evelyn stood center stage, performing alongside them, while Ryan watched from the crowd, clapping with quiet pride. When the music ended, Evelyn looked out at the smiling faces, young, old, rich, all connected by the same invisible thread: music, humanity, hope. For the first time, she understood. Her mother's words had been a prophecy. When life breaks you, play, and let your heart do the speaking. And she had. Her music had not only healed her, it had healed him too. As the applause swelled once more, Ryan caught her gaze from the audience. She smiled back, bowing deeply, her violin gleaming under the light, the sound of redemption echoing into forever.